The delicate silver charm, a tiny, intricately engraved locket she recognized with the force of a physical blow, lay nestled amongst a tangle of makeup brushes in her best friend's overnight bag. It was the locket her own husband David had given her on their first anniversary, the one she believed she had tragically lost months ago. Seeing it here, in Jessica's possession, in her own guest room, sent a paralyzing jolt through Chloe's body, a current of ice-cold dread that stopped her breath. The comforting reality of her life fractured in that instant, revealing a horrifying chasm beneath. You think you know the people you love, but you can never truly prepare for the moment their secrets rise to the surface. Stay with this story to witness the devastating fallout when a simple act of kindness unearths an unthinkable betrayal, proving the deepest wounds are inflicted by the hands you trust the most. For 2 decades, Chloe and Jessica's friendship had been a constant, an unshakable pillar in the architecture of their lives. They had navigated everything together, from teenage heartbreaks to career milestones, their bond hardening into something that felt more akin to sisterhood. Jessica was a permanent fixture at family holidays. The godmother to a hypothetical child they often joked about, and the keeper of secrets Chloe had never entrusted to another soul. Theirs was a friendship built on a foundation of absolute, unquestioning trust, a bedrock Chloe believed was utterly unbreakable. This profound trust extended to her marriage with David. In their 10 years together, they had built a life that was the envy of many of their friends, a partnership characterized by mutual respect, shared goals, and a deep, comfortable affection. David was her anchor, her confidant, her partner in every sense of the word. The love she felt for him and the platonic love she felt for Jessica were the 2 defining relationships of her adult life. Twin stars that she believed would guide her safely through anything. So, when a burst pipe turned Jessica's apartment into a disaster zone, Chloe's response was immediate and instinctual. She insisted Jessica move into their spacious guest room, dismissing her friend's protests about being an imposition. The thought of Jessica staying in a sterile hotel room while she had a perfectly good home felt wrong. It was a simple gesture, an act of love and support that felt as natural as breathing. For the first few days, the house buzzed with a renewed energy, filled with their shared laughter and the easy camaraderie that had defined their long friendship. The discovery, when it came, was a moment of shocking, accidental clarity. It was a Thursday afternoon, and Jessica was out meeting with an insurance adjuster. Chloe, deciding to do a load of laundry, went into the guest room to gather any towels. Jessica's large duffel bag was sitting half unzipped on the bed. As Chloe passed, she brushed against it, causing it to tip over. A cascade of cosmetics, chargers, and personal items spilled across the pristine white comforter, a mundane little accident that would in seconds detonate her entire world. Amidst the colorful clutter of lipsticks and eyeshadow palettes, a familiar silver gleam caught her eye. Her heart gave a painful lurch. It couldn't be. She reached out with a trembling hand, her fingers closing around the cool metal of the locket. She flipped it over, and there it was, the tiny, bespoke engraving of her and David's initials hidden on the back. It was hers. The locket she had grieved, the tangible symbol of her first year of marriage, was here, in Jessica's bag. A wave of vertigo washed over Chloe, forcing her to sit heavily on the edge of the bed. Her mind scrambled for a rational explanation, a life raft to cling to in the surging tide of dread. Maybe Jessica had found it somewhere. Perhaps it had fallen into her purse months ago by accident, and she had simply forgotten about it. Chloe desperately tried to make this narrative fit, to believe in an innocent mistake, because the alternative was too monstrous to contemplate. But the innocent explanation felt flimsy, a paper-thin defense against a terrifying truth. Jessica knew how devastated she had been. Chloe had cried on her shoulder, lamenting the loss of something so precious. Jessica had helped her tear the house apart looking for it. To find it and say nothing for months, it was a level of carelessness that felt cruel, an act of omission so significant it could only be deliberate. The word betrayal began to pulse in her mind, a slow, sickening drumbeat. With the locket clutched in her hand, her mind started to race backwards, replaying the events of the last year through a new, horrifying lens. She recalled Jessica's sudden defensiveness a few months back when Chloe had vented about David working late so often. She remembered the strange, shared glance between David and Jessica at a recent dinner party, a flicker of something she couldn't decipher at the time, but now felt like a secret acknowledgement. The pieces were all there, waiting for this terrible catalyst to connect them. The physical reality of the betrayal began to set in. A cold sweat broke out across her skin, and a wave of nausea rose from the pit of her stomach. The beautiful sunlit guest room, a space she had decorated with such care, suddenly felt claustrophobic, like a cage. The trust she had so freely given to the two most important people in her life was not just broken, it felt like a weapon they had used against her. And they had brought that weapon into her own home. She knew she had to confront them, but her mind was a chaotic storm of pain, rage, and disbelief. How did you even begin a conversation that would end your world as you knew it? With movements that felt stiff and robotic, she pushed the locket back into the pile of Jessica's things and zipped the bag shut. She couldn't let her friend see that she knew. Not yet. She needed a moment to arm herself, to build some sort of fortification around her shattering heart. She had to act normal, a performance that felt utterly beyond her capabilities. An hour later, Jessica returned, walking in with a bright smile and a story about the frustrating insurance adjuster. "You will not believe the hoops they're making me jump through," she began, dropping her keys on the counter. Chloe, who was standing frozen in the kitchen, felt her friend's cheerful voice scrape against her raw nerves. Every casual word, every easy gesture was a lie. The chasm between what was real and what she was pretending felt impossibly wide, and she knew she was about to fall. Chloe let the silence stretch for a moment, gathering the remnants of her strength. "I was tidying up in the guest room," she stated, her voice unnervingly even. She watched Jessica's face intently, a detective searching for the first crack in a suspect's composure. "Your bag tipped over." Jessica's expression remained open, curious. "Some of your things fell out onto the bed." Chloe paused again, letting the weight of the moment build. "Including something of mine, my silver locket, the one from David." The shift was instantaneous and devastating. The friendly curiosity on Jessica's face vanished, replaced by a stark, visceral panic. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving her skin a pasty, sickly white. Her eyes widened in sheer, unadulterated guilt, her mouth opening and closing silently like a fish gasping for air. In that single, horrifying moment of recognition, Chloe saw the entire truth reflected in her best friend's eyes. It was real. It was all real. A torrent of weak, tangled excuses spilled from Jessica's lips. She'd found it. She'd meant to tell her. She'd been waiting for the right time. She forgot. The lies were pathetic, an insult to Chloe's intelligence and their shared history. They were the desperate, flailing attempts of someone caught in an inescapable trap. Chloe remained silent, her stillness a powerful counterpoint to Jessica's frantic babbling, allowing her friend's deceit to hang in the air and suffocate them both. "Jessica, stop," Chloe finally whispered, her voice cracking with a pain so profound it momentarily eclipsed her rage. "Please, just stop lying. You owe me that much, don't you?" The raw anguish in her own voice seemed to finally break through Jessica's panic. The frantic excuses ceased, replaced by the ragged, heaving sobs of a confession that was about to be wrenched free. And then the secrets, the ugly, poisonous truths began to spill out. The affair had started almost a year ago. It wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a sustained, calculated deception. It began with flirtatious texts, escalated to secret lunches, and soon became a full-blown affair conducted in cheap hotel rooms and, sometimes sickeningly, when Chloe was out of town, in her own home. Every word was a fresh layer of filth piled onto the initial wound. Chloe stood motionless, absorbing the brutal details. She felt a strange sense of disembodiment, as if she were floating above the scene, watching two strangers enact a tragedy. She learned that the locket had indeed come off during one of their trysts. David, in a moment of unimaginable cruelty, had told Jessica to keep it, a twisted memento of their shared betrayal. The thought of David giving her gift, a symbol of their love, to her best friend as a trophy was a level of perversion she could not comprehend. The confession painted a complete and damning picture of the past year. David's late nights at the office, Jessica's sudden weekend trips to visit family, the dozens of small lies and near misses, it all coalesced into a conspiracy of breathtaking arrogance and disrespect. They hadn't just betrayed her, they had built an entire world on top of her own. A shadow life lived at her expense, fueled by her trust. When Jessica's confession finally whimpered to a close, the silence that fell was heavy with the stench of decay. The friendship was not just broken, it was dead, and its corpse was lying between them in the kitchen. Chloe looked at the weeping woman before her, the woman she had loved as a sister, and felt a profound and chilling emptiness. The love was gone, scoured away by the acid of her deceit. "Pack your bag," Chloe said, her voice flat and hollow. "I want you to get your things, and I want you out of my house." Her command was absolute, leaving no room for argument or negotiation. Jessica started to plead, to beg for a chance to fix it, but Chloe was already deaf to her. The trust was gone, the love was gone, and there was nothing left to say. Chloe did not watch her leave. She simply stood in her living room and listened to the sounds of Jessica hastily packing, the closing of drawers, the zipping of the bag that had been the catalyst for this nightmare. She heard the front door open and then click shut, the sound echoing through the house like a final, definitive gunshot. The silence that followed was absolute, a profound and terrifying void. Now she was alone, left to stand in the ruins. The home that had been her sanctuary now felt like a crime scene, every surface contaminated by their lies. She walked through the rooms, looking at the photographs on the walls, of her and David on their wedding day, of her and Jessica laughing on a beach. They were all props from a fictional play she had unknowingly been starring in. The second act of this horrifying drama was yet to come, the confrontation with her husband. The hours she waited for David to come home from work were the longest of her life. She sat on the sofa, numb and motionless, replaying Jessica's words, steeling herself for his. Would he lie too? Would he try to gaslight her, to twist the narrative, to save himself? The man she had promised her life to was coming home, and she had no idea who he was anymore. When he finally walked in, his cheerful greeting died on his lips as soon as he saw her face. She didn't need to say a word. She was sitting there, shrouded in the dim light of the living room, with the silver locket sitting on the coffee table in front of her, gleaming like a tiny silver indictment. He saw the locket, he saw the chilling emptiness in her eyes, and his carefully constructed world fell apart. His reaction was a sickening echo of Jessica's. The initial, frantic denial quickly gave way to a crumbling, pathetic confession as he realized the depth of what she knew. Hearing the same sordid story from his lips was like having the knife of betrayal twisted in her gut. He admitted to everything: the length of the affair, the lies, the profound disrespect. He confirmed that he had told Jessica to keep the locket. The sheer intimacy of the betrayal was what broke her most completely. This wasn't a random, drunken mistake. This was a sustained campaign of deception with her other half, her soulmate, her sister. They had colluded against her, whispering in her own home, sleeping in her own bed, all while smiling to her face. It was a violation of the most sacred trust, a level of treachery that felt almost biblical in its scope. There was no screaming, no throwing of plates. Chloe's grief was too deep, too profound for such a performance. Her rage was a cold, hard diamond in her chest. When he finished speaking, his voice thick with a self-serving regret that did nothing to move her, she simply pointed to the door. "Leave," she said, the single word carrying the weight of 10 years of love and 1,000 lies. He tried to argue, to plead, to promise it was over, but his words were meaningless noise. He was a stranger to her now, a man who had conspired with her best friend to systematically destroy her heart. She watched as he, too, packed a bag, his movements clumsy and filled with the shame of a man who has lost everything through his own weakness. The second click of the front door sealed her solitude. Alone at last, Chloe sank to the floor, the carefully constructed walls of her composure finally crumbling into dust. A wave of gut-wrenching sobs tore through her, the sound of a heart breaking in the oppressive silence of her empty, tainted house. She was mourning two losses at once, the death of her marriage and the death of a friendship that had been the cornerstone of her entire life. She stayed on the floor for a long time, surrounded by the ghosts of her former life. The secrets that had unfolded when she had invited her friend over had not just broken her heart, they had annihilated her reality. She was untethered, floating in a dark, empty space, with no sense of which way was up. The pain was a physical entity, a crushing weight on her chest. Slowly, as the first hints of dawn began to streak the sky, the storm of her grief began to subside, leaving a cold, quiet emptiness in its wake. She looked at the locket, still sitting on the table. It was just an object now, a piece of metal stripped of all its magic and meaning. It was a relic from a life that was no longer hers, a testament to the destructive power of secrets. She knew the path ahead would be long and excruciating. Learning to trust again, learning to feel safe again, felt like an impossible task. The intimate nature of the betrayal, the fact that it happened in her own home, had left a deep psychological wound that would take years to scar over. Her sanctuary had been desecrated, and she would have to learn how to cleanse it or abandon it entirely. Yet in the depths of her despair, a tiny, resilient spark flickered to life. They had taken her past and rewritten it as a lie. They had tried to make a fool of her, but they had not destroyed her. The truth, in all its brutal, agonizing glory, had set her free from the fiction she was living. She was broken, yes, but she was no longer blind. The house was silent, waiting. It was no longer the home she had shared with David, or the haven she had offered to Jessica. It was just a space, 4 walls and a roof, waiting for her to decide what came next. The betrayal had ended her world, but it had also, in the most painful way imaginable, handed her a blank page. The story from here on out would be hers, and hers alone, to write. If this story of intimate betrayal and shattered trust resonated with you, or if you have faced the painful reality of being deceived by those closest to you, please share your thoughts and find support in the comments below. Your voice matters. Don't forget to like this video if it moved you, and subscribe for more powerful stories about the complexities of human relationships.